Hello, I'm David Hume. History is all around, as is evidenced by this memorial to General Sir James Steele on Ballycarry's Amenity Green, telling the story of a very distinguished army officer who was born and grew up in this community. But what is history? History is objects, it's books, photographs, memories. And in this short film, we want to explore objects that people have and the story that those objects actually tell and the memories that they provoke.
The object I have is the examination roll of the Windy Gap School for 1898. Now, examination roll. Why did they have an examination roll? Not so that the children were told how well they had done, but so that the inspectors would consider that the schoolmaster was up to his job and therefore would get paid. Part of the payment, a third of the payment, depended on the examiner's, the report of the examination. That was how it was done, hence the examination roll. The Windy Gap School no longer exists. Once upon a time, there were lots of little schools all round the countryside. And the reason was very simple. They had to be accessible because all children walked to school, and a couple of miles or so was probably the viable distance. Windy Gap, the place name still survives, about a mile to the south of Ballycarry, just sitting among the fields. It was a one-room school, most of these schools were, 17.5 feet by 14.5. And a one-teacher school. Likewise, most of these schools were. Education, basic, reading, writing, arithmetic, but for those who were able, it went a bit further than that, although a lot depended on the school teacher at the given time. Numbers varied. The peak of the Windy Gap School enrolment is 1843, when there were a grand total of 80 children. How they got 80 into a building that size, I really don't know, but it's rather unlikely, of course, they all would have turned up on the same day. In any case, numbers were large, but in those days, the population of Ireland was twice almost what it is now, and most of them lived in the countryside. There were wee cottages and farms everywhere, teeming with children. So all these little schools had their place at the time. Numbers declined as time went on. The greatest difficulty was if you had a good teacher with a good reputation, the school increased. If you didn't, well, then it slipped back. Exactly this happened at the Windy Gap. The one who was there after the 1840s, maybe not quite as well regarded. Certainly the inspectors said so. Numbers went down a bit. This is 1898. There are 35 names on this examination roll, which is, less than half of the peak. It declines further, and by about 1900 it's obvious that it's no longer viable. The school closed in 1903. The teachers at the Windy Gap School seem to have been there for a long period of time each. That was a very common thing. They thought nothing of a teacher being in one school and being there for 20, 25, 30 or more years. The last teacher was a man called William McGiffin. Now, McGiffin is a Ballycarry surname, family connections of that name about the place for generations. He was schoolmaster, but then he also combined that, as many teachers did, with other jobs in the community, and he was the church secretary in the old Presbyterian church in Ballycarry, and he carried that on through until his death in 1929. It was a part of the community. He was a part of the community, and many of the children in that community knew him, although others went to other schools. But the Windy Gap played a significant part out on that side of the village, and there is a record of it. We're not told what the inspectors thought of each child. All we know is they thought, yes, that's all right, that will do for now, and they signed off the report, and that was McGiffin's pay for that year confirmed.